Hey everyone. So in this video we are going to discuss some terms regarding the respiratory volumes and capacities. So as we discussed in the previous video, when we're talking about breathing, we measure or we can measure how much air can enter and leave the lungs. And there are a number of ways that we can measure this. So if you like numbers and math, usually this is something people like. If you don't, just bear with me. You don't really need to know too much math for this, but just the thinking process behind it will help. And what I mean by that is, here's a graph, and I think this graph will be helpful. If you dislike the graph, you can skip towards the end of the video, and you can just see on the next slide everything I'm going to be talking about except explained. So let's do this. Let's begin with what is the most fundamental term out of all of these terms on this graph, because it can be a little overwhelming. Let's just start with plain and simple tidal volume. All right. Tidal volume, it's exactly what it sounds like, the tides. So if you're familiar with the tides, if you've ever been down to the coast, if you've ever seen a beach, the tides are water just moving in and out, right? So if you're sitting at the beach, just watching the water come in and out. If you've never been to the beach, you can YouTube a video of it. It's just water coming in and out, right? You can't see my hand here, but I just keep making a motion of going in and out. I completely forgot I wasn't even being recorded here, but I'm just making that motion. Why am I doing that? Because most of the day, you're just, living, you're doing the same thing with your breathing. It's just air going in and out of your lungs, right? You're just breathing. You're not breathing too deeply. You're not exhaling as hard as you can. You're just sitting there and you don't even realize you're just tidal volume. Air just goes in and out. And we can measure that. As you can see on the left hand side, we measure everything in milliliters. So we can measure how many milliliters of air are moving in and out of your lungs. In this case, it's just tidal volume. You don't even realize, you're not even thinking about it. Air coming in and out. So with that said, keep in mind, notice these little marks here, right? If we want to find out how much is going in there, we just subtract the higher number from the lower number, right? And that's why in this case, if we're looking at tidal volumes, it's only about 500 milliliters of air moving in and out. Wait a minute, I thought on the last picture, it looked like 3,000. Again, I know I'm being a little bit of a jerk here, but the point is, it's not that number, it's the volume. So it's between its highest point and its lowest point. So you subtract the highest point, how much air is in your lungs when you inhale, versus how much is still in your lungs after you exhale. Again, tidal volume does not mean you're inhaling as deep as you can or exhaling as deep as you can. There's still air that you can inhale after you inhale through your tidal volume. You can inhale even more. So, for example, just imagine you're breathing here. Just relax and you're breathing. After you inhale, stop, and then inhale as much as you possibly can on top of that. That would be this recording. That is known as your inspiratory reserve volume, meaning how much more air can you breathe into your lungs after you already took a breath. You can measure that too. You can also go the opposite route. After you exhale, how much air can you exhale on top of that if you exhale as much as you possibly can? That is called your expiratory reserve volume. So in other words, you have space. You can inhale even more, you can exhale even more. You actually even have more air in your lungs than what you think, because after you exhale, if you were to exhale all the air you possibly could from your lungs, you would still have over 1,000 milliliters of air in your lungs, because your body will not allow you to completely remove all of the air from your lungs. If that were the case, you would have a pneumothorax, which is a collapsed lung. And once that lung collapses, it's very difficult to get air back in. So with that said, your body does not let you get that low. So you do have even more room to exhale. We also have our vital capacity, which is if you were to exhale as much as you possibly can until you can't exhale anymore, and then inhale as much as you possibly can until you can't inhale anymore, that's how much space you have that you can possibly inhale and exhale on your maximum efforts. You also have your inspiratory capacity, which is how much you can possibly inhale after you exhale regularly. So, for example, if you're sitting here, you're just having a tidal volume, you're inhaling and exhaling. After you exhale, you inhale as much as you can. It'll be slightly more than your inspiratory reserve volume. Again, if you look at the chart here, inspiratory reserve, after you inhale, how much more can you inhale? Whereas inspiratory capacity is after you exhale, how much more can you inhale? Then you also have total lung capacity right here. Total lung capacity is how much is total in your lungs. That's pretty nice. It's self-explanatory. What's the maximum amount of air that you can have in your lungs at one time? Lastly, you have your functional residual capacity, which is how much air can you fully exhale plus the total amount you have remaining in your lungs after you fully exhale. So, in other words, you just add up the expiratory reserve volume and the residual volumes from previously. There's a lot of terms here. If you are getting a little bit overwhelmed, don't get too overwhelmed because we do have a lab where we will be focusing on this. But if we did not get to that lab yet, this is a good start. If we already did that lab, hopefully at this point, this is just a little bit more of a review. Again, if you would like to look at the next slide, it has everything we've talked about, as well as rough averages for all these volumes and descriptions that you can take a look at if you prefer to look at the words. Again, try not to just memorize everything. Take a step back and ask yourself, what does this mean? Right? If you better understand the term, it'll make your life a lot easier because there are so many terms you don't want to just start memorizing everything. Again, I said it before and I'll say it all the time. Do your best to avoid just memorizing. All right, if you have any questions on this, please let me know. I'll happily go over any of this with you.